Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, it's been too long. Anyway, it is now time to finally wrap up and bow out on our retrospective series on the Streets of Rage games.
Now, technically, prior to all of this, there was some other attempts to get Streets of Rage back into the market. This occurred during the 5th generation of consoles. While Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3 did do well enough, Sega really didn't seem that interested in moving forward with the franchise as time went on. Interestingly, it was a short time after this that a different company altogether would go to Sega to pitch them their own idea for a Streets of Rage follow-up. This company would actually be Core and Eidos.
Yeah, I know, weird, right? The house that Tomb Raider built actually wanted to take a chance at the Streets of Rage series. I don't know if that is awesome or genuinely frightening.
Either way, despite Core sharing some proof of concept ideas, their Streets of Rage plans were ultimately shot down by Sega. As far as reasoning goes, I believe it was because Core was pushing the idea that they wanted the game to go multi-platform, which understandably, Sega, still being a console competitor, was not about to let one of their franchises leave the stable. However, that didn't stop Core and Eidos from moving forward on their own, and thus, Fighting Force came into existence.
I unfortunately don't know anything about that game or its sequel, but hey, maybe that's a review for another time.
There was one last attempt to bring Streets of Rage back into the limelight, and it would actually be by the company Ancient, who was founded in Japan by the man himself, Yuzo Koshiro, aka the music composer for the Streets of Rage games. This version of Streets of Rage 4 did indeed begin development for the Sega Dreamcast, and there is actual video evidence to show that it indeed existed as a demonstration. Streets of Rage 4 for the Dreamcast looked to be pretty ambitious, but let's be honest here, it did look a little too funky in its execution. It was gonna have a whole bunch of interesting features like first-person mode and such, but quietly the game would get cancelled, and it was speculated that it was Sega of America that decided to pull the plug. The explanation was that given how games were advancing and struggling to make the leap into 3D, the beat-em-up genre was kind of a tired relic that wasn't going to be profitable.
And if you want my honest opinion, while all of that may be true, the reality is the writing was on the wall. Given that the game was being developed for the Sega Dreamcast, and given that the footage that we've seen, and Sega struggling financially, and being in a really bad spot, well, it wasn't long before the dream was dead.
That's when Bomber Games stepped in 2003. This ragtag group of ambitious game developers, artists, and musical composers would create their own fan-made love letter to the Streets of Rage franchise they grew to love. And while it did take quite some time, eventually the fan game was completed and released to the world for free. Streets of Rage Remake was here, and hot damn is it something special. What Streets of Rage Remake is by and large is essentially what Sonic Mania is to the classic Sonic games. It takes the best of the original games, such as its characters, its music, levels, and story, and blends them all together on a grander scale, and turns it into the arguably best video game beat-em-up experience I have ever played. Hell, I probably could make an entirely separate video on this game alone because of the amount of replay value and content within it. And looking back, I probably should have, but here we are. From the start of the game, you can select your campaign scenario and are treated with dialogue cutscenes between stages. The game also gives you alternative routes to take during levels that can end up altering the actual story itself. This is really awesome. The game features the playable characters from the past, including remade versions complete with brand new moves. And after you finish the game several times over, you can use the money you gained during the playthrough to unlock special perks, including more characters to play as well as new weapons to use like lightsabers, guns, and a whole bunch of other stuff. I have played this game on and off for a couple of years now, and I still don't think I've seen everything. And guys, if there's one thing I can give Sega credit for, it's that they allow fans to make projects like these. I mean, Jesus Christ, check out the Sonic the Hedgehog community with all of the fan games and mods there. What other company do you know would allow this kind of fan service?
So yeah, I definitely think I've talked about this fan game enough. If you guys can, definitely go and search up the Streets of Rage remake and give that game a shot. Those guys definitely deserve it. But hey, I don't know about you, but I like free stuff.
As for the mainline series, years went on and we got, well, a whole lot of nothing. That was until 2017 when Ben... Yeah, him. The CEO and artist at Lizard Cube expressed interest in reviving the series after they had completed their remake of Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap. Sega actually responded quite favorably to the group's desire to do something with this long-dead franchise. Thus, Lizard Cube, along with the publisher .emu, were given the green light to go ahead with a Streets of Rage project on their own. Like with Wonder Boy, Ben originally was going to remaster Streets of Rage 2, but he ultimately decided that instead of trying to recreate the magic of that game, they would instead make a sequel that continues the adventures of our beloved heroes. And in my opinion, I think that was definitely the better choice. The truth is, we already had the original game, which had aged like fine wine. I mean, why do we need another Streets of Rage 2? What's wrong with the one we have?
Okay, I admit that's a bit of a bad example, because it is true. There are a handful of occasions where remakes actually can do the original justice. But still.
In 2018, we finally received the debut trailer in which we saw Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding's new designs, and a first glimpse of the gameplay. I remember my first initial reaction of it like it was yesterday. I was excited and digging Axel's new dad bod look, but I was also thinking, wow, this game has one hell of a hard act to follow, as well as a hell of a legacy to live up to. And after the long wait, the game finally arrived. Well, did it fulfill all our hopes and dreams? Or did it serve as a reminder that we should have left well enough alone?
Why, God?
Well, let's find out. What the hell is that? Sounds like a copyright strike waiting to happen.
Just a second there, Bill. You can't do a Streets of Rage retrospective without me.
Gene, what the hell are you doing here? And... door!
Come on, man. I'm just as big a fan of the series as you are. And besides, who helped you do that Sega Genesis vs. Super Nintendo retrospective?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's gonna work out. I'm already halfway into this review. Besides, does Liz even let you play video games anymore?
Of course she does. Besides, I'm the master of my own house. What I say goes. Ooh, speaking of which, I have to stop by the grocery store tonight. She wants to make some filoche, so I have to get some eggs. I gotta get some flour.
Now, just for the record, we played both the Nintendo Switch and Xbox One versions of this game, but as far as we know, all console ports of this game are virtually identical. The story takes place 10 years after the events of Streets of Rage 3. Now, thankfully, they didn't try to recycle an old story by bringing Mr. X back to life once again. Because come on, after the last game, that guy should be deader than the Duke Nukem franchise. This time around, we got two brand new villains, the children of Mr. X, the Y-Twins. Their plan is not unlike their father's, but instead they want to take over Wood Oak City in the most modern, millennial way possible, using the power of dubstep to brainwash its citizens into servitude.
They even got their own Y-Tower skyscraper, where they chill at the top, all Lex Luthor style. Like, it never dawns on anyone until near the climax that this location might just be where to find them.
First, to find the Fearsome Five's secret hideout. If only I had some clue. Any clue at all.
Anyway, Blaze Fielding catches on to their scheme, and she calls in to get the group back together. Join the battle are newcomers Cherry, who is the daughter of Adam, and Floyd. He's definitely the new heavy of the team, who feels very inspired by Jax from Mortal Kombat. Floyd is said to be the new assistant for Dr. Zan. Axel once again comes back to lead the group, and I gotta say, his new look is pretty cool. It just screams, stuck in the 90s. However, things aren't going to be easy because it turns out that the Y-Twins have bought out most of the police force, making them none too helpful. The Y-Twins confront the group attempting to bribe them, but of course that's not going to work. The team is forced to retreat for the time being. Eventually, the group comes face to face against Estelle, who's captain of her own squad. In a cool twist, she can fight you in the same special attack from Streets of Rage 1, i.e. calling for backup. Adam eventually shows up and gets her to back off. And for the first time since Streets of Rage 1, he becomes a playable character again. Our heroes carry on beating down more and more of the Y-Twins' lackeys. Soon they meet up again with Shiva, Mr. X's former right-hand assassin. As you would expect, he's none too happy to see his old adversaries and proceeds to waste no time in getting into a fight. Surprisingly, he goes down rather easy and reveals that he's not in cohorts with the twins. as he does not agree with their methods of doing things. He cooperates and tells the heroes where they can find them, which we stated earlier is
The building with the giant Y on it?
Come on, guys, really? Ugh, so they get to the top of Bad Guy Tower, and surprise, surprise, not only are they there, but the Y Twins have captured another old friend, Max from Streets of Rage 2. Using their music to control him, the twins unleash him on our merry band. One beat down later, and the Y Twins temporarily retreat to enact their plan on a citywide scale at the concert they had planned. Despite Max coming out of it, sadly he's not in a position to join the party. But he is okay, so that's good. The rest of the story plays out exactly how you expect. The group makes it to the concert in time to put a stop to it, forcing the twins to retreat to their island. You finally engage them in combat, yada yada yada. And in the end, Axel, Blaze, Cherry, Adam, and Floyd defeat the twins, they get them arrested, and then our group of heroes are exonerated. Adam becomes a decorated hero, Floyd continues to work with Dr. Zan, and, well, life goes on. Such as it is. Well, now that we've covered the plot, what do we think of it?
It's fine.
The story is over the top and silly compared to the somewhat bleak and serious tone of the previous adventures. Well, not that they didn't have their silly moments too. Hell, the third game definitely got a little Marvin the Martian with its science, but the stakes were still pretty damn high if you messed up. Streets of Rage 4 is a little more on the simpler side of things. There are no alternative endings, the narrative is definitely not as complex, and while the stakes are still pretty serious, the villains are very theatrical and showboaty, as if they were bad guys from the WWE. They come off very much as the young blood punks who want to carry on Daddy's work. And I'm not against the idea, I just feel like their scheme was a little too ridiculous.
That being said, the twins are neat characters and do have fun personalities. I could see them as mainstay villains should the series move forward. Still, the writing for the story as a whole is a bit hit and miss. I know it's a beat 'em up, and the story for those kinds of games aren't exactly what you sign up for, but I still can't help but feel like there should have been a broader narrative. It's been 20 years since we last saw these characters, and Streets of Rage, despite being a Sega Genesis trilogy, managed to have a legacy. And I think it deserves something a little more. So in conclusion on the story, we do like it. We just wish there was more of it.
But of course, when it comes to games, the story is only half the battle. Gameplay is where things must also shine the brightest. Now here is where Streets of Rage 4 had us on the fence. And what we mean is, it looked like Streets of Rage, it played like Streets of Rage, but things felt very different, especially during the game's launch. Now granted, it's been a hot minute, and the game has been patched multiple times over with updates that further balance out the enemy's AI. Additionally, we have gotten tweaks to the character mechanics, 3 new playable characters have been added, as well as a couple of extra modes. In part, this kinda is sorta why the review took so long to come out, as it was well known that these additions were going to happen, and any problems we may have had at the time would have likely have been addressed, and thankfully most of them were.
I think it will be quicker to talk about the things we don't like about the gameplay first. From the word go, it felt like this game had a severe balancing issue with the characters, bosses, and regular enemies. Axel felt like he was too slow, making it difficult to get in close. Some enemies had some ridiculous range, leaving little to or no way to counter or punish any of their moves.
Level 4 specifically was one that routinely pissed me off because there are these female enemies, Ruby and Diamond, whose main attack was to spam a dropkick. And not only could these women leap across the screen in a single bound, but no matter what trajectory you were on, or what position you stood, they were like homing missiles locked onto you. I mean, even as you were moving, you would get nailed every time, and goddamn, this shit was infuriating. There were many enemies that had similar instances where I had problems with their programming. What made it all worse was that it made me feel like a petty child that could only complain that the game was unfair. However, thankfully, most of that bitterness has gone because the mere fact that so many updates were done made me feel somewhat vindicated that I was clearly not alone on this.
Now, as far as the combat goes, for the playable characters, you have several at your disposal. With the initial release, you had the return of the 3 original heroes, Axel Stone, Blaze Fielding, and Adam Hunter. Through DLC, we have Max Thunder and Shiva. Again, the newcomers include Adam's daughter Cherry and her powers of rock and roll, Floyd with his mighty arms, and also Estelle. Damn, this woman is buffer than my dad. As an extra treat is that throughout the game you can unlock the classic sprite-based characters from the original game. Now, this is fan service done right. Honestly, there really is no bad character here. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. Axel is the most well-rounded, while characters like Blaze and Cherry rely more on speed. And of course you have your heavy hitters in characters like Floyd and Max. Bottom line, there is a character in this game that fits your preferred playstyle.
The gameplay is similar to that of the original trilogy, with some extra wrinkles. You move left to right and lay the smackdown on numerous enemies before taking on a boss. Along with the attack and jump button, you have other abilities at your command as well, such as throws, back attacks, special attacks, and aerial special attacks. With the specials, you can use them to get you out of a tight spot, but at least here, if you are able to connect with consecutive attacks after you do the special, you will be able to replenish all of your life. Well, at least until you take a hit.
A big new addition are the star moves. Now you get several per stage. When you choose to use it, your character becomes immune while you execute a super attack that can do a great deal of damage to the enemies on the screen. Personally, we tend to save them for the boss fights, as they can be a little tricky if you're not careful. When you're able to get their health down to about 50%, they go into an intense mode, and they start going all out to try to beat you.
What makes fighting a lot of enemies in this game, including bosses, much more of a headache, and was actually one of the major things that annoyed me about this game as a whole, was just how much reliant the game design had on enemies being able to no-sell your attacks. And for those that are unaware, no-selling is a wrestling term that means when someone is getting attacked, the foe is usually being unaffected by it, as if nothing is happening to them at all. Now, I will grant you, there were a couple of occasions that no-selling happened in the previous games, but when it happened, it was usually when you were fighting something very strong that it was understandable, like a machine. But here in Streets of Rage 4, oh my god, not only do a handful of these enemies have this ability, but so do all the bosses. It's an ability that seems to come and go for them, and I imagine this was done in an attempt so you couldn't just wail on them until they dropped, which admittedly, if you knew the tricks of the trade, you could do with relative ease in previous games. But still, I really hate the no-sell type of game design, most especially when it makes no logical or contextual sense as to why it's there. I know it's a game, and I know they gotta make a challenge, but from a game developer standpoint, to me, it really just feels lazy when your only means of providing a challenge is by making it so bosses and some enemies are gonna slap right through your attacks. And believe me, Streets of Rage 4 is by no means the only game guilty of this. Thankfully though, this is however where your special and superstar moves can be useful because they also provide you with a means of counterattacking and some invincibility frames of your own, if however brief. Stars can be picked up during your advancement through stages as well as other items. You know what I mean. It wouldn't be a Streets of Rage game without the crowbars, the hammers, the knives, and all the other handheld crap that you can use to bash your enemies' skulls in. Not only can you smash heads with them, but you can also throw them, instantly turning them into projectiles. What's also neat is if they connect with an enemy or collide with any object, they'll bounce off of that object and you can immediately catch it for some follow-up swings. I admit I don't use it a whole lot because I'd rather rely on just my raw fists, but it is nice that they did add some nice quirks to this sort of maneuver. Also, keep your eyes open for the apples and chickens to increase your health, and money cases to add to your points.
A big focus of this game is combination attacks. By nailing numerous attacks in a row, you have your chance to really increase your score. This also gives you the chance to perform juggles on some enemies. Not only will you get a chance to score extra lives, but you can also increase your chance to get an S rank upon completing the stage. If you ever lose all your lives, you will always have the option to retry, along with the optional assists, like more extra lives. But just bear in mind, your completion score will go down via penalties. When you attack the Streets of Rage, you can go at it solo or with friends. Locally, you can fight up to 4 players, while online plays allow only 2. In addition to the story mode, you can also unlock Stage Select, Arcade Mode, and Battle Mode. Speaking of locking, we noticed a cool thing during these stages. See these arcade cabinets? If you're able to pick up a taser and zap it, you will be transported into an old stage from a previous game, where after beating it, you will pick up some extra rewards. Now, as far as the graphics go, the look of this game is really well done. They went with more of a cartoon/comic book style, but it really works with the energy that this game does have. Music, meanwhile, felt a little more hit and miss. Now, there are some nice tracks in this game, specifically the ones made by the original composer, Yuzo Koshiro, which include the main theme and They're Back, which is the Stage 1 theme. But it turns out that several artists took place in adding tracks to the game, which we have to say is noticeable. So to our ears, the game's music is a little inconsistent. Some we really like, others are kind of meh. But for the most part, we do feel that the music does deliver. Hell, here are some tracks that we really do like from this game's soundtrack.
When it comes to all the new features that have been added, as a personal nitpick, I have to admit I was never a fan of ranking systems. Even back in the Sonic Adventure 2 days, these things only ever added to my stress because now on top of trying to survive or beat a game, I had to worry about whether or not the game thinks I did it well enough. Admittedly, trying to get a high score and a good rank is heavily tied to some strategy and knowing how to execute it, knowing when swarms of enemies show up, and how to chain combo attacks together without breaking the chain, and also trying to quickly get to the next group of foes before the chain timer runs out. Also, remember those supers we mentioned before, the star-based ones? Well, bad news. As flashy and cool as those moves are to do, the game actually penalizes you for using them, because your score increases greatly with the more stars you have on you when a stage ends. Which begs the question, why that's a thing to begin with? Why introduce a new power to a series only to encourage the player not to use it? This kind of logic is one of those things that I just find ass backwards. Why would you do that? Oh well, it's nothing to lose sleep over. Honestly, with the recent updates, the ranking system and leaderboards in truth have become far less relevant, because it really didn't take hackers and cheaters long to figure out how to manipulate it in some pretty radical ways. Oh yeah, that seems legit. When it comes to level structure, I thought they were handled pretty well for the most part, but at times it does feel like a stage can overstay its welcome a little. Thankfully, it's not nearly as bad as it was in the American port of Streets of Rage 3, but there are moments when it feels like enemies do begin to feel a little overwhelming, regardless of what difficulty you choose. Speaking of which, there are quite a few choices this time around. The tried and true for those who want a reasonable challenge, and a little something extra for those who feel like they've got something to prove or just really hate themselves.
Another fun aspect of this game was seeing all the cute little Easter eggs sprinkled in the backgrounds. In the sewers, you get some nice ones like the rings from Sonic, Shinobi, and a Ninja Turtles and Master Splinter reference. One of the sadder ones at launch of the game was, of course, seeing Rue behind the bar in one of the later stages. I was sadder because at the time, Rue was not an unlockable character, but just there for eye candy.
Rue, is that you? Help! I'm getting my ass kicked here! Give her by the board, help me out! The funny thing about this is, with all these years having gone by between Streets of Rage games and Rue getting a part-time job as a bartender, I imagine he's looking at the situation and just being like, damn, y'all fools are still fighting? And while it was disappointing at first that no matter what the scenario, Rue was not a playable character, thankfully, as of now, he is a fully playable character. Well, assuming you know the button combination to make him selectable. And you better believe he is just as fun as he always has been. In fact, I'd say Rue is probably the most useful when it comes to chaining attacks together, as all of his attacks and specials hit with such a rapid fire, making him arguably the most unique fighter of choice. It is a little bit underwhelming that we don't get to see him redesigned in the new graphical style, but still, bringing in his Streets of Rage 3 version is not a bad supplement. Speaking of other characters, in fact, Estelle, who also became a DLC fighter, turned out to be one of my favorite characters to play as, just because of how her attacks flow. It's sadly one of those things that's a little difficult to explain without you holding the controller, but what I really like about Estelle's attacks is that you can chain them together flawlessly, heading into one super where the enemies can be smacked into the edge of the screen, fly off of it, and then you can immediately follow up with another special attack where she dives on them and you can just pound them into the ground. It's awesome! Axel is still my all-around go-to choice when playing this game, however, at least when it comes to the new roster. Earlier we mentioned that you can unlock pretty much all of the old characters from each game, and unlike the fan game Streets of Rage Remake, where they too allowed you to unlock and use old characters, in that game, they completely remade from the ground up all of the old sprites and gave them new powers and abilities so they could be useful alongside the other newer characters who obviously had more abilities to work with. In Streets of Rage 4, however, and this is by no means a negative, the Streets of Rage 1 cast you can play as function exactly and only how they did in the original game, with their Star Super being able to call for backup. Now, because of them obviously not having as many moves and abilities as any other character, to balance this, the developers made the Streets of Rage 1 characters probably the most powerful characters to use. All of their 4-hit combo attacks do far more damage than most other characters do with some combo strings. Shoot, when I chose to play the higher difficulties, it was these guys that actually made those runs far more manageable. The Streets of Rage 3 versions of the cast also should get mentioned here too, as they have one unique ability no other version has, the ability to run and dodge roll. It's not as broken as it may seem, but it is one of the other unique character features that sets them apart from the others, guaranteeing each playthrough to be somewhat unique in how you choose to play it, and I really like that. Bottom line, Streets of Rage 4 brings and adds its own flavor and uniqueness to a series we thought had been long abandoned by Sega. And we're just happy to see that it's back in action, and do recommend people give the game a shot. It's very easy for both classical beat-em-up fans to get into as well as newcomers alike. I know one of the immediate thoughts when I was going into this game was how does it compare to the fan game? But if I'm honest with you guys, it's really not a fair comparison. Streets of Rage 4 was developed in about 3 to 4 years with an ambitious team trying to take the series in a new direction, while also delivering on all the nostalgia we loved, but also taking liberties where it needed to go in order to keep it fresh. Streets of Rage Remake, on the other hand, was a game in fan development for over 10 years with people who were very, very passionate about the franchise and were doing it for free. They had a long time to master their craft and put all of their effort into making it as great a game as they could, with no time limit or fear of failure. It's also loaded with so many features that it's ludicrous to think a major studio could get away with about half the stuff that they managed to put in, or even accomplish the same thing at all. But goddamn does Streets of Rage 4 come close. Its character roster is just as ambitious, a plethora of updates and modes to keep things fresh several playthroughs over, and multiplayer both online and offline. So the reality is, the development teams pulled through and really did deliver on a great game. Definitely give Streets of Rage 4 a shot.
And now it's time for the final call.
Final call? Hold on, Jade, stop. This is one of my videos. We don't do that here. Just share your stupid opinion and get out of here. Amateurs. So in the end, did we like Streets of Rage 4? Who are we kidding? Yes, we did. We loved it. I mean, the DLC patches and the quality of life improvements that they made down the line definitely did help keep our interest for the long haul. And in the end, we think it made it a very well-worthy follow-up to the previous 3 games. And with its success, we hope to get more games like it in the near future with other franchises that Sega owns.
How true that is. And hopefully, we'll see more Streets of Rage games in the future. And who knows, maybe we'll see other Sega properties like Altered Beast or Golden Axe.
Oh yeah, that'd be hella awesome. But the bottom line is, Sonic the Hedgehog, as great as he is not the only mascot character or only franchise Sega has in their pocket to fall back on. And we'd love to see more in the future, no matter what they are. So it's up to you guys to help make sure that happens. So go out there, get Streets of Rage 4, give this franchise a chance so that other franchises can have a chance. Meanwhile, guys, you've been watching The Brotherhood of Gaming. I'm William Morris.
And I'm Eugene Morris. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, if you have time, visit our Teespring store to check out some cool TVOG merch.
And until next time, I hope you guys are being safe out there. Things are pretty crazy right now, but I think we'll pull through.
See you next time.
Okay, bye! Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. It's your boy. It's your boy.
It's your boy. Yes, Streets of Rage 4 is an awesome game, and I really enjoyed it. Like I'm looking for a weapon.
Out of this house! Out of this house! Out!
Anyway, I'm like, you mother...
Bend over. You do not talk about Kingdom Hearts that way! So in the end, did we like Streets of Rage 4? No. That's some lines for me to say while you're doing all that. It's like, you can't do a retrospective series without me. Yeah, after all, who helped you do those Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis videos? Anybody can watch this.
You want to go to the view count? I'll prove it. We're getting more views on that thing we do on our current episodes. It's kind of sad.
Final call. Alright, hold up. Isn't that a little redundant? I mean, just share your damn opinion, man.
Okay. And I'm Eugene Morris. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. No.